Throughout the ups and downs of being a Sega fan, the one thing you can say is that it was always interesting. Sega wasn't afraid to make games that broke the mold of what you consider traditional genres. Over the years, they test the waters with many strange and wonderful ideas, sometimes nailing something special and sometimes falling flat on their faces. As the 32-bit generation got underway, the Saturn afforded Sega and its third parties a new level of power to try some neat new ideas. Polygons were of course essential to their plans, but the Saturn could also do some neat tricks with two-dimensional sprites, full motion video, and a combination of the two. That gave the developers at Zono, Segasoft, Angel Studios, and TLA Developments an idea to try a multi-genre title that was based around the musical stylings of the late great Ronnie Montrose. They would use many different graphical and gameplay styles to create a world and characters unlike anything before it. That game was Mr. Bones, released in 1996 for the Sega Saturn. And I guarantee you that it's one of the strangest titles that you've ever seen with a Sega label on it. Our story begins with the crazed Dagulian raising a skeletal army to take over the world. These red-eyed soldiers will lay absolute waste to the living, and there's only one person out there that can stop them. That's Mr. Bones, our blue-eyed, pure-of-heart hero that sees Dagulian as the madman he is. Unfortunately, you are just one single skeleton against an entire army, and they are coming after you non-stop the entire adventure. The gameplay of Mr. Bones is exceptionally difficult to describe without extensive explanation of just how many different types of levels there are. Seriously, there are over 20 different stage types here that have a vast range in visual style, gameplay, and objectives. Some simply have you running for your life, others are rhythm-based, and some are full-on action and platforming. There's also guitar and drum solos, surreal interactions outside your own body, and even some Tempest-style 3D vortexes to navigate. Some areas allow you a limited attack called a Skeletism Plasma Beam. This is your primary means to defend yourself in some areas. There is also a core idea behind every level that you must keep in mind. Mr. Bones is held together by skeletal magnetism, which is represented by the Bones life bar you see at the top right of the screen. As you take damage, you lose that magnetism and begin to lose pieces of yourself. You can often recover your bones as you run across them. There are also blue items like skulls, butterflies, mushrooms, and balloons that refill your gauge so that you will automatically pick up your bones as you pass over them. You also must reattach pieces of yourself in order. Some areas will even strip you of your body completely and force you to rebuild yourself to get to the exit. The biggest takeaway about the gameplay is that it's extremely varied and you are always doing something different. Mr. Bones is certainly hard to define as a single genre, and this makes up the experience top to bottom. I'm likely to repeat this a few more times before the review is done, but Mr. Bones really is unlike anything else on the Saturn.
First thing they gotta realize is that everybody has it. Little baby, as soon as he comes out of mama and has the blues.
Along with the various gameplay types here comes some huge variety in the visuals. Because so many genre types are represented, there are side-scrolling areas with lots of parallax scrolling, digitized and pre-rendered assets, and even full-motion video layers to make everything look suitably three-dimensional. The game really shines doing this too, making the visuals stand out at a time when everything was either strictly two-dimensional sprites or 3D polygons. The opening has you running from the skeletal army with a pre-rendered background scrolling by. The next area has you avoiding enemies on a slab as they try and hit you. The next is a more traditional side-scrolling area. The guitar solo uses polygons for the hero and pre-rendered assets all around him. And the variety in those visuals just never lets up. 3D vortexes, more pre-rendered backgrounds, overhead stages, and just about everything in between. There's also a fair bit of work done in the animation department, giving life to Mr. Bones and his undead pursuers. It's a nice step up from what we had seen the previous generation. I can't say it does any one thing incredibly well, but it maintains a cohesion that actually is surprising, given its vast amount of variety. Whether you appreciate these visuals or not, it's hard not to be charmed by the style and presentation it relies upon so heavily. I'd say many of you will revel in this and appreciate it all the more for it, while others may reject the digitized and pre-rendered assets as unappealing. The sound and music here are a big reason many people love this game. As I said before, there are tunes here from the legendary monstrous, and it will have its fans, which will most likely help your opinion of Mr. Bones immeasurably. Let's listen to a bit of it. To say that Mr. Bones is a divisive title is an understatement. Some will dig its style and relish the massive variety in its gameplay. Others will despise the simplicity of that gameplay and quickly grow weary of the difficulty it imposes. So what's my take then? Where do I fall in all of this? I'm not gonna dance around it anymore, so let's just say it. I despise this game. What I have described to you in terms of the different gameplay and the huge variety it offers means none of this is done well. How could it be? The developers were tasked with not just making a single gameplay element work well, but literally 20. That means the best you could have expected here was a jack of all trades and a master of none result. But it never gets that far. Much of this gameplay is simply frustrating and never amounts to anything more than that. Having to meander through the poorly done platforming sections, the awful full motion video running areas, or deal with any of the other gameplay styles left me with a sense of dread each and every time. None of this plays well, not a single thing. You can laud that variety all you want, but just as you are getting used to something that isn't particularly good, the game changes up and then introduces more that isn't very good. Not helping matters is that the game never gives you any real hint on what you actually have to do. While some of it is plain as day, other areas will see you die many times before you even recognize what the game wants you to do. And this utter despair becomes the entire experience for me. No matter how much style the presentation has, no matter how much some of the music may appeal to me, none of it matters because the gameplay is just so laborious and lacking any finesse or refinement. The core of this is as simple as any early 16-bit title, and once coupled with a difficulty that causes you to repeat sections of it many times, I cannot say this is something I want to return to. As if that wasn't enough, many of these stages are really long, so even if you do succeed early, it's still very easy to fail later on and need to repeat the process all over again. No matter how many times I play it, no matter how many chances I give it, I just don't see the fun in this game. Nothing is well done, and most of it feels like mini games to a much larger experience that never materializes. As it is, it's one of the least appealing games to me on the platform. So, you were probably sitting there thinking, holy heck, he just eviscerated Mr. Bones as an absolutely awful game. And you are right, I do think this game as it is terrible, but there's hope. You will have so much more fun with this using the cheat code that allows you to access every stage. This mitigates much of the frustration associated with its many gameplay styles. Essentially, when using the cheat code, it becomes a collection of mini-games that are far more tolerable. If you die, just jump right back in and try again. I would also like to advise many of you to look into the Japanese version of Mr. Bones. It's a much easier game that allows you more leeway in many of the more difficult areas. If you have any desire to play this, it may help you enjoy it a bit more, or at least get a better handle on things before you tackle the more difficult Western releases. Although I find myself hating this game on a pretty profound level, I actually don't mind recommending it to others. It's certainly unique as far as presentation, some of you will love the music, and if you ever plan to see the ending legitimately, there's hours upon hours of gameplay here. What doesn't appeal to me could absolutely be loved by others. But let's not beat around the bush. If you want to try this, definitely fire it up on an emulator or ODE first. I honestly think most of you will dislike it as much as me, but when a game offers this much variety, it will no doubt have its fans. Is that you? I'd love to hear your experiences down in the comments, and whether you loved or hated Mr. Bones. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.